Hello, I'm Simon, Head of Design and UX at the Virtual Forge, and on this episode of VF Blog Talk, I'm going to explore the human behaviour that illustrates why we need good UX. There are loads of videos online that talk about what good UX is. They explain principles and methods that show you how to implement it and ways that you can test and measure it. But what I find really interesting is digging a little deeper and asking myself why these principles and methods might have come about in the first place. What your users think, what habits they might have, and things you might want to consider when approaching a design from a user's perspective. I'm going to start off by introducing you to a book, Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. You might have heard of it already, it's a fairly famous book, but if not, I cannot recommend it enough. The book explores how your mind works and introduces us to the concept of there being two separate mechanisms for processing thought. System 1 is the fast system. It operates automatically with little or no sense of voluntary control. This is the system that allows you to detect though one object is more distant than another, calculate 2 plus 2, or drive your car on an empty road. It's more intuitive and could be thought of as the way that you unconsciously react to everything around you. System 2, on the other hand, the slow system, allocates attention to effortful mental activities or complex computations. System 2 allows you to focus on the voice of a particular person in a noisy or crowded room. Calculate 28 times 13 or parallel park your car on a busy street. The book explores several studies and tests that have been carried out that explain and support the two systems. One example in the book explains how your System 1 makes quick decisions for you. It takes the example of the bat and ball puzzle, which goes like this. Don't try to solve the puzzle, but rather listen to your intuition. A bat and ball cost $1.10. The bat costs $1 more than the ball. How much does the ball cost? Kahneman goes on to say that a number came into your mind. The number, of course, is 10. The distinctive mark of this puzzle is that it evokes an answer that is intuitive, appealing, but wrong. It's safe to assume that the intuitive answer also came to the minds of the people that came up with the correct answer. They somehow managed to resist the intuition. Kahneman then highlights an interesting fact. Many thousands of university students have answered the bat and ball puzzle, and the results are shocking. More than 50% of students at Harvard, MIT and Princeton gave the intuitive, incorrect answer. At less selective universities, the rate of demonstrable failure to check was in excess of 80%. So what does this mean for the user experience of your website or interface? I'm sure that a lot of you will identify that System 1 knee-jerk answer with the same system that you engage when you navigate through common repetitive UI items, such as modal boxes, form elements, email signups, capture responses, we use cookie messages. Everybody has blindly clicked on the wrong button in the dialog box and have either lost unsaved data, sent a message that you meant to be saved as draft, or installed some browser search bar from hell. What the findings from the bat and ball puzzle suggest is that we could assume that over 50% of the users navigating our website are likely to have an initial impulse that tells them which call to action they should be clicking on to navigate. It follows that a good proportion of those are likely to act on that impulse, and that's where the user experience designer comes in. It's our job to make sure that as many users as possible have the experience that they're expecting, even the impulsive ones. Although Thinking Fast and Slow is not a UX book per se, most, if not all of the concepts that it explores offer us an insight into the things talked about in more UX-specific titles. A good example of this is a favourite of many UX designers, Don't Make Me Think by Steve Krug. Steve states that his first rule of usability, as the title of the book suggests, is Don't Make Me Think. Steve explains that, as far as humanly possible, a web page should be self-evident, obvious, self-explanatory. I should be able to get it without expending any effort thinking about it. I think that in most scenarios this is a principle that most web users will agree with. In Thinking Fast and Slow, Kahneman explores why not thinking is desirable and what the effects of being made to think are. He explores the mental and physical effects of being made to think harder than normal. Tests have shown that your pupils dilate, your muscles contract, you sweat more than normal. In other words, it's actually physically more uncomfortable to focus your attention. Kahneman even talks about studies that suggest that users that are forced to concentrate on something in order to understand it start to distrust the credibility of it. So in most cases, UX designers will try to mitigate the amount of thought required to navigate a user interface, a UI. They will purposely put things where they think a user will expect it to be, will use labels and headings that a user will be familiar with, and try to limit the amount of text used to get a message across. As a result of this, however, really usable websites can sometimes be a little safe or unoriginal in their design. That might be okay, but most of the time, safe and unoriginal aren't things that you see in a brief. So what can you do? Personally, I think it's really important to have a good UX testing strategy in place when you start a project. Ask yourself, your team, your client, who is going to be using this? What do they want out of it? What do I want them to do with it? You might recognize this process as building user flows and personas. Then, the key thing is to identify ways in which you can measure the success of the user's interaction with your interface. A UX designer will never produce a perfect interface first time. Design is subjective, all users are different, and there's no one way of designing something correctly. A good UX designer will work with the client to agree on a plan of how the user is meant to navigate an interface, and show them how it has been designed to achieve this. These are things that are measurable and can be analysed and tested using software such as Hotjar or Google Analytics. You might even want to create a prototype and run a UX test on that before getting too far into the build and design process. It will allow you to make evidence-based suggestions and experiment with more original concepts or ideas. And you'll be safe in the knowledge that if anything does go wrong with your experimental 3D rotating menu, you'll be able to identify the issue, rectify it, and then test it again straight away. What Thinking Fast and Slow highlights is that there are so many different things that affect the way that you process information. It covers many different subjects that relate not only to UX, but visual design, content creation, and copywriting too. So in summary, I can't recommend it enough. If you have any comments or questions, or have a project that you'd like to talk to us about, feel free to contact me via the information in the description. Don't forget to click like if you found this video interesting. We're planning on putting out more videos soon, so subscribe if you want to be kept up to date with those. And that's the end of the first episode of VF Blog Talk. Hope you liked it, and see you again soon.